Respected Chairman of the Tirupur branch of SARC of ICAI, the office bearers, and the learned members in the profession. It is indeed always a more humbling experience to be part of various learning activities and initiatives of the institute. This time, very meticulously, the chairman was behind me to have a presentation on e-invoicing and quarterly return and monthly payment. Coming back here in connection with this particular topic, though this topic is more of one league of this topic is largely applicable to all those larger section of the society or the larger section of the GST assessee, and yet another topic which is completely out and out applicable for a small taxpayer from the GST perspective. We will try understand over the next 120 minutes or so in connection with some of the important aspects of both e-invoicing and quarterly return and monthly payment. To start with, a series of frauds have been committed by various unscrupulous traders, where a lot of thought process goes in. The first parliamentary report which tabled thrown a number that 9,000 crores of tax evasion has been happened. The second parliamentary report, in another 3 months' time, doubled the number. And the third report, which was tabled some 2.5 years later, in fact, gave a altogether different number. More than 250,000 crores of fraud are being committed. No doubt, in any multi-point taxation, there would be challenges. This is not something new. This is not the other countries who are all on the league has not crossed. It is quite natural when it comes to this process. But something need to be carefully noted down over here is these aspects. As far as these aspects are concerned, the government was very clear that how we can start concluding all these aspects. So there, no doubt, the institute was also part of in the process of generation of e-invoice. When this term e-invoice was uttered for the first time, all of us started to think, where it was also a concept prevalent in few countries, where is it an invoice that is going to be generated through the portal which is kept by the government, or it is this model. Let me also remind a fact here before moving forward. It is not only the fraudulent activities. On the other end, government had various thought process in implementing GST. One of their serious thought process was matching of input tax credit. Somehow, the way in which their original matching of input tax credit that they have planned for, where the data will be uploaded by the supplier and GSTR1 will go and hit the GSTR2A, then from 2A to 2, all that which was being envisaged by the government got a hit, and later point in time, the technology committee said it would be two-way movement of invoices are going to be difficult. So let's forget a two-way movement of invoice. Let's implement something, a unidirectional movement of invoice, which is one-way movement of invoices. What do we mean by this unidirectional movement of invoice? The data will be fed into the system only once. After that, the data will be keep on moving from here to here, here to here, or wherever locations as the case. Now, coming back here, getting into this discussion, this e-invoicing thought pattern came to the government, having taken up various stakeholders. A few stakeholders came out and told, see, we need to, by this time we also had e-way bill into operation. We need to give data for e-way bill. We need to give your GSTR1 data. GSTR1 data is different. E-way bill data is different. Formats are different. Site is different. Can't you synchronize all this? Again, a thought process went, can we synchronize all this? The answer was no, because both are in different database, both are capturing different data. One is not linking with others. So enough challenges they had. So to put an end to all these discussions, and nowhere service providers is forming part of all these activities. So government brought in this model of e-invoicing, where certain standard information, let me repeat, certain standard information will be obtained by the government, and a number will be allotted to that invoice, and that number need to be mentioned in the invoice generated by the supplier, and then only that invoice can be issued by the supplier. So it is not as we or some of us still think it is a invoice generated through the system. It is an invoice generated by the tax department. Nothing. It is a same old tax invoice generated by the supplier in his accounting package, through his ERP, through his proprietary packages, through his proprietary bill processing system, whatever be it. Whatever be it, let me repeat. Idea here is, from the invoice, we identify some 35, 36 relevant information. That 36 information we will collect for every invoice. Let me repeat. That is where they got that interesting aspect. For every invoice, we will collect that information and we will hold that information. So coming back here, the very purpose and the need for implementation of e-invoice, these are all paved way for implementing e-invoices. And from 2019, though government have been once again, time and again have been implementing or highlighting that we have to implement e-invoice because of the pandemic outbreak, because of this COVID-19 outbreak and the pandemic, it got postponed, and they have amended the relevant sections, or to be more precise, they have amended the relevant rule, the method in which invoice need to be processed. Rule 48, which discuss about how an invoice has to be issued, within what time frame it has to be issued, in what models it has to be issued. There they went and meticulously amended. If a supplier, 48.4 would discuss about it, GSTR rules 48.4. If a supplier whose aggregate, if a supplier who's going to be specified class of person by the GST Council, then that supplier shall issue a invoice in a particular format, or he would generate a IRN, invoice reference number. He would generate an invoice reference number. That invoice reference number he will mention in the invoice, and then he will supply to the he then only can issue a invoice. And very interesting to note, the sub rule 5 and sub rule 6 makes this discussion more interesting. Such a person shall issue only e-invoices, and those e-invoices alone will be valid. Rest all document will become invalid. In other words, if I am going to be a recipient, and being a recipient, I am going to claim input tax credit. Now I should ask a first question to my supplier. Boss, for you, e-invoicing applicable or not? If they say yes, then I should ensure that I get a invoice with a IRN mentioned on that. In case if my recipient says my supplier says no, for me e-invoicing is not mandatory, then I should have some documentary evidence to prove as a recipient. Let me repeat, what I'm speaking may not be relevant for much of our SME segment companies, but in case they want to be little above than an SME and they want to do a turnover of, let's say, 50 crores, 80 crores, or a maximum of 100 crores, then those all organizations should engage in this activity. And it's only a question of time. As we all know, 1st October 2020 was the day announced for implementing e-invoices for organizations whose aggregate turnover exceed rupees 500 crores. So for various reasons, it was difficult for those organizations to come and start issuing invoice within that time limit. A one-time relaxation was given. You generate normal invoice, but ensure you report those invoices within 30 days from the happening of that invoice, which means technically from November 1st, 2nd onwards, every organization whose turnover more than 500 crores, no doubt, November 1st, 2020, every organization whose turnover, aggregate turnover exceeded 500 crores, e-invoicing become mandatory. Now, here's one small point for us for a better discussion. Previous turnover more than 500 crores. Agreed, sir. We agreed to your discussion. We can accept that turnover more than 500 crores. Now, what is a turnover more than 500 crores? Is it my P&L turnover? As we all know, no, it is not P&L turnover. It is an aggregate turnover. So all those branch transfer, stock transfer, cross charge activity that are done will all form part of this turnover apart from the regular taxable supply, exempted supply, export supply, this, that, SEZ, whatever they do. When all these put together, 500 crore it crosses in any of the preceding financial year, which came as a later amendment. Let me repeat, any of the preceding financial year, 1 year later, 2019 itself, it was originally notified. 1 year later, an amendment comes which says within the 3 preceding financial year, by the time it was implemented, we had 3 preceding financial year. Any one preceding financial year, if your aggregate turnover exceed rupees 500 crores, e-invoicing is mandatory. Somehow major companies, big companies started implementing it. It was little successful and they had their own initial teething problems. But again, organizations are large. They can handle that bandwidth. They moved. They did their own sandbox testing, various other testing, freezed in. We also had enough challenges on that. And somehow they sailed or crossed the bridge. The next due date came for organizations whose turnover are more than 100 crores. From 1st of January 2020, 2021, from 1st of January 2021, all those organizations whose turnover exceeds 100 crore, e-invoicing became mandatory. Often a doubt would come up here. My turnover exceeds 100 crores, e-invoicing is mandatory. No, I am engaging only in services. Do I need to issue a e-invoice? Yes. Be it goods, be it service, e-invoices common for everything. As I earlier mentioned, e-invoicing is nothing but a reference number. Let me repeat. That's all maximum weightage we can give. A reference number which is generated from the GST common portal. We have a particular portal name for it. From that portal, one reference number is generated. That reference number will form part of the invoices. So coming back here, getting into the further discussions. As part of the 100 crore club, whomever is the organization, they should start generating and issuing e-invoices. So from 500 crores to 100 crores, the aggregate turnover got reduced. As of now, no confirmed news. It's not a confirmed news. But people who are all close to this activities, people who are all very close to the understanding of GST on a very regular basis and updates they get on a very regular basis, they are of a view that from 1st April 2021, it would be applicable for all organizations whose turnover exceed 5 crores. But however, this fact yet to be verified. It's been told, it's been widely spread. But again, unless something forms part of the notification in GST, we will not give due weightage. So many times, many people can question this thought process. No, 5 crores above, is it not would be applicable to large number of people? When this thought process of the parallel topic, QRMP, quarterly return method, was being proposed sometime during mid of October 2020, a small survey was conducted by the government. The survey came out and highlighted to the government that 92% of the GST assessees aggregate turnover is less than 5 crores. Let me repeat. 92% of the assessees aggregate turnover is less than 5 crores. Now, I hope even if they extend to 5 crores, it is not going to bring a large number of crowd into this system. Absolutely not. It will only have again a limited number of crowd. Just for your information, as we are discussing today, as of now, we have 79,946 assessees, or approx 80,000 assessees who are registered with GST for e-invoicing. Is that small? Yes, this number is that small. So these are all about the need, introduction, legal background for e-invoicing. Getting into specifically the purpose, need, and the method on those aspects associated with it. Throughout many countries, the concept of e-invoicing is common and been in existence. India is no different. As we earlier discussed, they wanted a unidirectional movement of data. they want a standardization in the data collected. One time I should collect data, all data I should collect. Standardization of their data which is getting collected. Thinking in all this, e-invoice format is developed, GST INV 01, where it will in-house various information. The name of the supplier, GST number of the supplier, address, name, GST number, address of recipient, invoice number, invoice date, followed by description of goods, HSN number, quantity, value, rate wise, each line item, rate of tax wise, then individual rate of product, discounts if any, then the final one. All these information, which are any case processed as part of the respective billing softwares, respective SAP or accounting packages which are with them, they will generate an invoice. That invoice, these information which are there in that invoice, through the respective accounting packages or through a API functionality, the data will be fed into the login of the GST department, where they have a dedicated portal for this e-invoice purposes, and a e-invoice reference number will be created, very popularly called as IRN, invoice reference number, a 64-digit hash number. Why we call it as a hash number? It's so unique that there can be only one hash for one invoice. In other words, every invoice that is generated is so unique. So that is how it has been planned. An invoice which has been generated in the portal and submitted either through the regular mode of using the offline utility, online utility of the GSTIN, where they have some facilities, Excel sheet facility, bulk upload, all that stuff. Or many times with my small experience on few assessees, I see a seamless movement of data. He press here, an accounting package pushes the information, goes to the portal, automatically puts in the portal. From the portal, picks up back the IRN, and when he gives a print, the IRN is printed, and the QR code, quick response code, very popularly called as the layman's understanding, which is going to be a square box with black dots. A QR code is also captured. This QR code contains about more than 8 informations: name, address of the supplier, a name, address of the GSTN of the supplier and recipient, invoice number, date, rate of tax, value, followed by the number of line items that are there in the invoice. If an invoice had 5 items, it contains that small box QR code captures all these information, followed by the hash value. Now, an invoice which is going to be generated by the organization will be reported, certain fields will be reported to the e-invoicing portal, and from there a e-invoice will be generated. From there a reference number will be generated, and that reference number will be seeded into their regular invoice, and finally they'll take a printout of that invoice, sign and send it, or digitally sign and send it so that that would be treated as a valid invoice as per Rule 48 of CGST rules. To me, e-invoicing is applicable. However, I have not raised e-invoice. I still regularly raising normal invoice. What would happen? Nothing would happen. One, it is not treated as a discharge of valid invoice. So that goes for a hit. Two, the recipient claim of ITC is now at stake. Those two are the probable exposure that I see as part of a non-compliance under e-invoice. Is whether for all type of activities and transaction, do I need to generate this e-invoice? The answer is no. In case of all B2B supplies, in case of all those supplies made by business to government, or it is an export supply, or it is a supply through e-commerce operator, or in case of reverse charge mechanism. As a supplier, you will not pay tax as a recipient, but you will pay tax, sorry, you will not pay tax as a supplier, but your recipient is liable to pay tax. So as a supplier, you are going to issue a RCM invoice. Coming back here, more precisely, for B2B transactions, B2G transactions, supply of goods through Amazon, or it is going to be a transaction of export, supply of goods to export, in all the cases, e-invoice has to be issued by the supplier. Maybe for a bill of supply, which is basically an exempted supply, e-invoicing was not mandatory. Or it is a B2C supply, business to consumer supply, e-invoicing is not mandatory. But for these exceptions, in all other situations, e-invoice becomes mandatory for the respective organization to cross the threshold. One or two further aspects in connection with e-invoicing. This e-invoicing will be generated for a tax invoice issued by a supplier for a B2B transaction, a debit note issued by a supplier for B2B transactions, a credit note issued by a supplier for B2B transaction. So be it a tax invoice, be it a debit note, or be it a credit note, in all these circumstances, no doubt, e-invoice has to be generated by the supplier. I am sure all of us will agree. Tax invoice, time limit for issuing tax invoice is handled as part of section 31. So let's not get into the time limit. But one difference as compared to the earlier discussion is e-waybill was applicable only to goods, whereas e-invoicing is applicable for both goods and services. Because of introduction of e-invoice, the recipient gets the claim of ITC. E-waybill data is part A of e-waybill data at least, but for the vehicle number, lorry receipt, all that stuff, the part A of e-waybill data is automated. As part of GSTR 1, the data is getting also automated. So those are all some of the advantages as part of the e-invoicing aspects. maybe few words becomes new to us as part of e-invoicing. On that first word, a dedicated portal was generated by the government. Government has a specific portal where they allow everyone to go and generate e-invoices, which is also referred as common portal under GST, which is e-invoice 1, e-invoice 1 dot gov gst.gov.in. Likewise, they have about 10 different numbers. So as of now, the crowd is manageable. As of now, things are going more smoothly. So there is a invoice registration portal, IRN, which the one I have highlighted now. It is called as IRP, Invoice Registration Portal. E-invoice 1.gst.gov.in. There, a user ID password has to be generated, similar to that of eWaybill, after giving the basic information. Whenever they are done with their invoice from the accounts, whenever they are done with the invoicing, then additionally, few information has to be reported to the site, and IRN number need to be generated, and invoice can be issued only after referring this. So those are all the requirements. Getting into the hardcore procedural aspects of e-invoicing, nothing much. Originally, we found it little difficult because it was not allowing bulk upload. It was not allowing many aspects. Today, it is not like that. Today, it accepts bulk upload. Today, at a click of a button, more than 150 e-invoices are getting generated. So from today's perspective, my personal experience is e-invoicing site is little easier. One or two here and there challenges that we have on e-invoicing. Of that, the first challenge in connection with e-invoicing. I generated an e-invoice, upload in the site. I got my IRN. Later I find, or later I am given to understanding that data which is fed is wrong or erroneous. Can I cancel an e-invoice? A cancellation of e-invoice, is it possible? Yes, a cancellation of e-invoice is possible. Absolutely, as we understand and think, there are no restrictions. Absolutely, there are no restrictions in connection with the aspects associated with cancellation. If an organization want to cancel its e-invoice, yes, happily they can go ahead and cancel the e-invoice. This e-invoice should also be generated for debit note or credit note. Yes, even for debit note issued by a supplier who is want to increase the value of supply, then he will issue a debit note. That debit note will also form part of the reporting requirement. Or if someone want to reduce the value of supply, then they will issue a credit note. So all these are all part and parcel of the activities, and a e-invoice which is being generated here can be cancelled within 24 hours. If I don't cancel within 24 hours, what will happen? Nothing will happen. There will be a trial left in the system. As part of a personal recommendation, if in case for some reason, a e-invoice which need to be cancelled was not cancelled, it is better to pass a credit note through the system itself, referring the invoice. Let me repeat it. Procedurally, it will be correct. No doubt. By referring back to law, there are downside associated with it. Many times, many challenges would come to us. I'll share one of the recent challenges. 3 days before this organization has called up and told, Ganesh, you are aware we have migrated to GST system. We have aligned everything. We did our sandbox testing. We matched everything. They had their own internal ERP and they got connected with the API, did that programming, and now they are generating the IRN and QR codes. Problem is not there. Somehow, while integrating the data, they missed to configure, or while configuring, they missed to highlight reverse charge as no for that particular voucher type. Because they missed to configure it, or it was wrongly configured as yes, 8,000 line item of e-invoices, which were all done over the last 1 month, are supplied to the clients, respective recipients as RCM applicable. Yes, for that case, actually RCM is not applicable. They are a customs house agent supplier. Being a customs house agent, for him RCM and all will not come at all. But erroneously, it was marked and sent. Nobody identified. Testing team forgot. The implementation team forgot. Things went on well. Now, for them, the issue is different. For them, the issue is, Ganesh, what I'm going to do now for GSTR1? Can we modify the data which is already uploaded in the system? Whatever already uploaded as part of GSTR1, as part of e-invoicing, automatically those data automatically goes for e-waybill, automatically goes for filing of GSTR1 data also. We can import the data, modify it and set it back so that things goes back normally. Why I want to highlight all this is here in this model of, or in this method of e-invoicing, every person leave a trial in the system. That is something very important. Tomorrow, if in case for some reason, if a supplier has not disclosed a transaction, officer will very comfortably cross-verify the number of e-invoices issued and the number of value of the invoices reported and do a best of the data analytics. In fact, officer will not be involved. There will be business programs that would have been done, and these cross-verification will be done by the respective organization. So coming back over here, these are all some of the major aspects associated with e-invoicing, and as part of the procedural compliance in connection with e-invoicing is also concerned, the respective web page, which is self-explanatory, which will allow us to register in that portal first as an IRN. Register first in that portal and then provide some of the basic information in a format which will be called for by the respective person. And then once the data is fed into the system, once all those basic data that are all fed into the system, they can very comfortably proceed with all those other aspects associated. So those are the prime points in connection with e-invoicing. Here, there are a lot of doubts associated with its implementation. Uh, in case of few assessees who has omitted to generate e-invoice, what is the way forward? All that we will take it up as part of our query discussions. So that would take us to the broader conclusion of the e-invoicing discussion. Any questions in connection with e-invoicing alone? To be more precise, as we are discussing on that format or on those aspects, we will take up questions only on that. Either you may unmute yourself and raise the question, or you can put it on the chat box over here, and I'll try to share my best answers. Shanmuga Sundaram sir has raised this question. What is the remedy you have done for the error? Oh, the error that I have told for that 8,000 line items. No. As far as this error is concerned, no doubt we cannot change the e-invoice or IRN that is generated. But the GSTR1 data is completely revamped. We ask them to download the original file, share it to us by using a third-party software, corrected that respective what is it respective reverse charge column alone. From RCM yes to RCM no, we have changed it and asked the client to re-upload. In case any error committed while filing the invoice, no doubt that data can be corrected at the GSTR1 level. But let me also repeat it. This is just an option available. So definitely tomorrow somebody will question why so many differences between your e-invoice and the GSTR1. Is there is a possibility to correct it? Yes, there is a possibility to correct it. So those are the solution that we have drawn for that particular issue. Yes. If any question is there, yes, I would take it up, or else we can move forward towards the next topic that is lined up for us, which will be QRMP. So, coming back here, getting into from a larger organization or more from a specific business perspective, a day-to-day requirement of generating invoice reference number and reporting it to the government so that the government have a better data availability with them. Now, coming back here, the topic that we are going to discuss would be completely a contradicting topic to that of what we have taken up earlier. A question from Deepak. For export, is it mandatory for generating e-invoice? I think to my understanding, yes, it is mandatory. Specifically, it was subsequently introduced as part of the notification which was issued during 2020. If I'm not wrong, 70 bar 70 of 2020 central tax precisely added the word export. So Deepak ji, in my view, yes, it is mandatory that they have to issue a e-invoice even if they are for the purpose of exporting. But no doubt, but the fundamental principle is very simple. The previous year turnover should exceed 100 crores. That is a fundamental principle. Once that gets exceeded, then be it B2B, be it what is export, or it is government supplies, generation of e-invoice becomes mandatory, no exception, including debit notes and credit notes. Yes. If so, value should be in the foreign currency. No, value will be in Indian currency. Foreign currency information is also getting captured. Foreign currency information is also getting captured if it is an export invoice. See, Ranga has raised a question. Sir, GSTN is cancelled during the middle of the month while filing GSTR1 on 10th or 11th. Not able to delete the same on in the offline. GSTN cancelled during the middle of the month. Okay. While filing GSTR1 on 10th or 11th, okay, it is getting error, not able to delete the same in offline. Ranga sir, I'm not very sure about your question. Maybe we have to you have to come offline. Sorry, you have to come online and explain it. I'm unable to understand the question. Sorry. Export through LUT at the time of generation of shipping bill number, and it is mandatory, but it is not possible at the time of raising invoice. What is the remedy? Ganesan sir, your question is export through LUT at the time of generation of shipping bill number and is mandatory, but this is not possible at the time of raising the invoice. See, as of now, when it comes to GSTR1, we are uploading it at a later point in time. When it comes to the aspects of when it comes to the aspects of e-invoicing, we are only mentioning the respective port details. We are not mentioning the what is it, shipping bill number details. So when it comes to filing of this export related transactions, I agree to you. There is no doubt about it. But I have been told that is not a mandatory field for the purpose of uploading the or generating the invoice. Please provide a solution for conversion rate for export sales. While generating the exports invoice through e-invoice system, usually we adopt the customs rate for accounting purpose. But implementing e-invoice, we adopt current rate before shipping date. Jayant G, my view is you can go with customs rate itself, except the day in which you generate the invoice and the day in which goods are going to be exported. If in case there is going to be a difference, only then you will have a problem. That difference you can sort it out in your GSTR1 at the time of filing. So that aspect should be considered only in that way, or it has to be considered as a permanent difference and allow it to go as allow it to go as a reconciliation difference. But my recommendation is, if assuming if today you're going to clear goods for the purpose of export, then today what is the customs rate, you will adopt that rate and the invoice would go. But today you will adopt it as a rate and it would go. But when there is going to be a change in the rate between the time you send the goods and the time in which shipping bill is generated, at that time, I would recommend you to put the shipping bill, put the shipping bill rate in the GSTR1. So to that extent, do I have a value difference between e-invoice and GSTR1? Yes, and I believe it is explainable. It is explainable because of this special requirements which are there. What should we do if e-way is not generated automatically? Shiva Arunji, I have no clue. Let me be very frank. See, I'm more of a person who is on to the front end of the law. If you ask me beyond a level, I will on the compliance, I would have little bit stumble. Let me make my upfront confession here. With whatever I understand, part A is getting filled properly. Just check some basic profile updation is correct and proper. I don't find any other difficulty because with whomever we interact or in connection with this, they are all coming out and comfortably sharing that things are being little automated and they don't have much of issues in connection with generation of e-way part A. And part B data, as usual, we have to mention. Ganesan sir, let me repeat it. As I earlier mentioned, I have never had an opportunity to see an exclusive exclusion for LUT. If you have LUT, then e-invoice is not mandatory. I have at least never come across such a notification because we have only 4 or 5 notification in connection with e-invoicing, not much of notification starting from 68 of 2019 to 69, 70, 71, 72. Yes, 68 of 2019 to 72 of 2019 will completely close the procedural requirement changes, all this. After that, only 70 of 2020 and 71 of 2020. 70 of 2020, 71 of 2020. These are all 2019 notification. So I am not very confident on that exemption that you are, Ganesan sir, that you are trying to press on. If it is through LUT, then e-invoicing is not mandatory. Whatever I understand is e-invoicing is a mandatory for the purpose of export, irrespective of export with the payment of tax, export without payment of tax. Export without payment of tax, it's going to be an additional benefit of obtaining an LUT and going to go. But any case, let me clarify at a later point. Client turnover is only 2 crores and only doing export. What about e-invoice? Client turnover is only 2 crores, Sivaram sir, then don't bother about it. For him, e-invoice is not applicable. We are talking of somebody whose turnover is going to be 100 crore plus. That's all. If somebody's turnover is not 100 crores, then I don't think so. There is no pressing need that assessee has for the purpose of e-invoice. Let him comfortably do his export turnover up to rupees 2 crores, and there are no challenges associated with it. Coming back quickly, getting into to the shoes of the from a large taxpayer to a small taxpayer. As far as this small taxpayer is concerned, a small taxpayer whose aggregate turnover does not exceed 5 crore in the preceding financial year, then that person is entitled for a scheme, very popularly called as the QRMP scheme, quarterly return and monthly payment scheme. As far as QRMP scheme is concerned, the quarterly return and monthly payment, this particular scheme insist upon all those small taxpayer will enjoy a certain set of freedoms, certain set of benefits that are associated with it. As usual, is it really beneficial? Is it going to solve the challenges that are faced by the small time taxpayers? All these are all always a common point that will be before all of us. But as part of this scheme was discussed during the mid of 2020 because various thought process of the government. On one end, we had the original return filing process was not successful as it was thought about it. The form GSTR 1, 2 and 3 never materialized. Where it was officially announced form GSTR 2 and 3 will be suspended. We had the GSTR 2A, but it is not serving the intended purpose, which was expectation of the government. So what the government decided is we will come up with a new set of return and proposed Sahaj, Sugam, all that returns we popularly called as the new return. A business process document came and various other process came. Somehow again, going back and altering all this becomes little more tough, and people are very comfortable with form GSTR 3B and GSTR 1. So government thought, let's not withdraw this forms, let these forms continue, but we will devise a scheme. And there was a constant pressure from MSME that our working capital is getting blocked, we are unable to make the payment, you are not considering the requirement of the small taxpayer. The small taxpayer and the large taxpayer are at the same footing when it comes to GST. Many questions were raised. Slowly, government realized, yes, it is difficult for a small taxpayer to comply. Compliances of a small taxpayer are different that of the large taxpayer, and brought in this method. As the name suggests, QRMP, quarterly return, quarterly, that normal person will file return, but monthly he will pay tax. That is why it is called as quarterly return and monthly payment. Proposal to introduce this came in the 42nd council meeting, again October 2020, and necessary amendments to be carried out was already a thought process. Section 37 got amended, 39 got amended, section by CGST Act 2019 got amended. Those amended section got notified during January, followed by necessary rules need to be amended for the purpose of claiming credit, reversals, all that stuff. All those procedural compliance and legal background are being done. The idea behind this scheme is to reduce the compliance burden of a small taxpayer. That is the only idea. And as I earlier mentioned, the latest statistics with the government says to them, a large amount of suppliers are small time taxpayers. A large means a large amount of suppliers are small time taxpayers. Given an environment like this, government stepped in and highlighted. Government stepped in and very simply highlighted that each and every existing taxpayer whose aggregate turnover is going to be less than 5 crores, they are entitled for the scheme. Any compounding person, any composition person who now changes to the normal levy, he can also opt the composition levy, followed by a newly registered person. When he is stepping into the GST, he can also opt for this composition. In fact, they have widened that it would be applicable for a lot of persons. What are the key advantages of this method? First advantage, I no need to file return. Okay. Whether it is good or bad, whether it is easy or tough, this is one kind of relaxation, a mental relief a small time taxpayer gets, as against many small time taxpayers have opted for quarterly filing of GSTR1 and monthly filing of 3B. So 12 plus 4, 12 plus 4, 16 returns comes down to 4 plus 4, 8 returns. This reduces the compliance burden of a small taxpayer from 16 returns to 8 returns, where monthly he has to file 3B and pay tax. In the QRMP scheme, he is going to pay tax, but he will not file return. That was the interesting aspect. Beyond that, let me repeat, beyond the compliance burden reduction, I don't find any larger benefits a person is going to enjoy. I am not very sure how it is going to benefit a small time assessee beyond this. Of course, they are not liable for late fee. That is next problem. Like auto meter, it has been late fee is being calculated automatically and no control. At least they are also liable for interest, but interest, it's not automated, it's going to be manual. Yeah. When it comes to this particular scheme, government has drawn a cutoff based on the filing of return of October return, based on filing of October return. People who have filed the October return before, within the due date, November 20th, 22nd, as the case may be. Now, people who have complied and filed the return before within the due date, based on their earlier selections, they have allotted or they had made a default setting. In other words, somebody turnover earlier is up to 1.5 crores of aggregate turnover, and they opted to file return GSTR1 on monthly basis, 3B on monthly basis. For them, monthly return is given. Earlier, they are a small taxpayer as per the old definition of small taxpayer, and their turnover is less than 1.5 crores. They opted for a quarterly filing of GSTR1 and a monthly payment of GSTR3B. For them, they gave a default setting of quarterly payment, quarterly filing of return. Assessee whose turnover more than 1.5 crores but less than 5 crores, for this people, again government has given a default setting who opted, any case monthly 1, monthly 3B. For this people, default it became quarterly. The only exceptional soul will be less than 1.5 crores. Look at that wording, less than 1.5 crores, but opted monthly GSTR 1 filing. And of course, 3B naturally monthly filing. This person who opted monthly GSTR 1, monthly GSTR 3B, this person would be covered by the monthly scheme. He only has to consciously move. Otherwise, by default, everybody was moved to quarterly basis. Let me repeat it. I also will agree with some of our members, learned members will raise a concern that no, one of my associate turnover is less than 2 crores, but he was under the monthly scheme. One of my associates turnover is more than 5 crores. He got migrated to the small scheme. As of now, time limit is over. I'm sure all our members are aware. The change of method can happen throughout the year, but after filing of previous quarter return, before the end of first month of that quarter, the change can be initiated. In other words, if someone want to opt into the scheme, QRMP scheme, or someone want to opt out of the scheme, the only date that is possible is going to be April 30th. From 1st of April to 1st of 30th, April 30th. Precisely, in my view, only after filing the GSTR 3B for that quarter, that option will get enabled, is what people have told us. Okay. In between change, I don't foresee. So in case some of us have a doubt that there was a wrong selection made, actually this fellow turnover is more than 6 crores or 8 crores, but erroneously a few crores is not reported or something, some mistake, it is considered as a QRMP. Change can happen only during April. Nothing now is possible. The only way out is paying tax under self-assessment. Under self-assessment method, tax has to be paid, but there are other consequences. Let me take up that question as an exceptional person little while later, not now as part of the core discussion of QRMP. So a scheme was floated by the government. Whole idea is to reduce the compliance burden, make the small taxpayer, tax payment, tax compliance, everything is easy. A default setting was set by the government, and the default setting was also communicated, if I'm not wrong, 26, 27, 28, 29th of December, every assessee would have been received their settings. If there is a change in their setting, they would have received a mail or a SMS. And they would have been also told in the mail or in the SMS that before January 30th, they should have corrected it to the respective month if they wanted to change. Else they can continue. Now, under this quarterly return and monthly payment, I am a supplier who is engaged in B2B supplies. I am happy when being complied with it, but I supply to various SMEs, big time players, all that. All those other person will pressurize me that because his eligibility of credit is based on me as a supplier reporting the transaction. To overcome the difficulty of those small time suppliers, who are going to supply to another business person, B2B person. So a specific functionality was introduced called as IFF, Invoice Furnishing Facility. The very purpose of implementing IFF is nothing but to report all the B2B invoices. Let me repeat. Is it mandatory for me to report all the invoices? Let me repeat. It is not mandatory, but it is a wise option, because only if the supplier update the details, the recipient will be entitled to claim credit. So if you want your recipient to claim credit, if you want your recipient to honor a payment to you in connection with that particular bill, no doubt that recipient will first ask you, have you updated this in my invoice, all the other requirements in connection with this. Or let me put it in this way, the supplier might be a supplier who's a small taxpayer, but the recipient is a person not covered by small taxpayer benefits. He might be doing 10 crores, 12 crores, 15 crores. This supplier might be a supplier doing only 3 crores. He might report the transactions, file a GSTR 1 and 3B on quarterly basis. But this should not be a hindrance for the recipient of this supplier to claim his credit. Tomorrow, the recipient has his own set of restrictions. The recipient is again now covered by 36(4), again followed up by various other requirements of matching the credit, this, that, 42, 43, all whatnot. To ensure a smooth functioning happens, this IFF facility is opened, where it is opened with an option and with some restrictions. First, all B2B invoices alone of a QRMP person, quarterly return monthly payment of a QRMP person, can be reported as part of this invoice furnishing facility. A typical GSTR1 table 4A, 4B, 4C, 6A, 6B, 6C. A typical, of course, 9 and 9A, 9B, 9C. Invoice furnishing facility is no different from the GSTR1. But only thing is, not the entire 13 table is captured. The most relevant table of B2B alone was part of this invoice furnishing facility. For example, a supplier during that month has supplied goods worth 30 lakhs. Of that 30 lakhs, 27 lakhs he has supplied to registered person, B2B supply. Then he has to report once that month is over. Let's say January is over, before February 1st to 13th, a special date, 1st to 13th, before 13th day of the succeeding month, the QRMP person, using the invoice furnishing facility IFF, can report all his B2B supplies. He can report all his B2B supplies. For all 27 lakhs, details such as date, invoice number, GST number of the recipient, taxable value, rate of tax, tax, total invoice value, place of supply, RCM applicable, not applicable. Standard regular GSTR1 information that will be captured as part of IFF. IFF comes with only one restriction. At no point in time, in a month, value of all the invoices put together can exceed 50 lakhs. Why a restriction like that, don't ask me, honestly. Okay. But that is a restriction. Okay. At no point in time, IFF facility can accept an invoice beyond the value of 50 lakhs. Maximum it can accept value up to rupees 50 lakhs. Followed by this functionality will be operationalized only during this period, first to 30th. Sir, if I miss the due date of 13th, can I file? As it stands today, no. 14th, can I file and upload? No. 15th, can I upload? No. Before 13th, it has to happen, which will enable the supplier's recipient to hit the data well within the time. So automatically the data will go and sit in the GSTR 2B of the recipient when the supplier report promptly in the invoice furnishing facility. Invoice furnishing facility will reduce the problem of the small taxpayer in case if they are interacting with registered persons, because that was only concern. That was the only concern why many small taxpayer were in the monthly filing of GSTR1. Otherwise, they will not be, because they supply to a bigger person. That fellow says monthly, it is not coming. Eventually, monthly comes. That was the real reason behind it. As part of QRMP, monthly before next month 25th, before next month 25th, January, Feb 25th, before Feb 25th, tax alone will be paid for the previous month in a form called as PMT06, which is a regular form. PMT06 is already a regular form which is used for paying taxes. Earlier also we used that form only. Now also we are using that form. But what they have did is they have added an option there. Are you going to pay for other than QRMP? Are you going to pay this tax as a QRMP? One information is upfront obtained. And in QRMP, the payment of tax for January month, whatever supply is made, the tax has to be paid before February 25th. Having said, tax has to be paid before 25th, and the form that should be used for paying the taxes is going to be PMT06. A next set of doubt comes, how much I have to pay, for which, how much quantification of their liability, how much they have to pay, for which two options are proposed by QRMP scheme. QRMP scheme proposes two options. Fixed sum method, option 1, the most easiest option. Fixed sum method. A pre-filled tax challan will be generated for the first time in the GST history. A pre-filled tax challan, already everything is pre-filled. When we get into the login and when we go back to services and there we go payment, majority of the data will be pre-filled. We'll only mention the tax. Okay. Or if you use any third-party software, inno vasadi ayidum. But in any case, coming back here, under QRMP, if they opt fixed sum method, a pre-filled tax challan will be generated. What is this fixed sum method? Or in other words, under QRMP, two options are allowed for payment. One is fixed sum method. Another one is self-assessment method, FSM, SAM. Fixed sum method, FSM, SAM, self-assessment method. What is fixed sum method? Nothing. What is the last quarter cash payment made by the supplier? What is the last quarter cash payment made by the supplier. Last quarter, let's assume this is an assumption because for October, November, December, this would not gel well. Let's assume Jan, Feb, March, that quarter. The cash payment made by a supplier is 45,000. For all these 3B, GSTR 3B for the month of Jan, Feb and March together was filed on March within the due date, and they have paid cash of 45,000. Means under FSM, 35% of the cash payment will be paid for this month. That's all. No questions. 35% of the previous quarter cash payment. Sir, we have paid cash only 10,000 rupees. 10,000 into 35% for month 1. Sir, for month 2, again, same 10,000 into 35%. The 10,000 is not March month number. It is Jan to March cash payment. Quarterly cash payment. Sir, this time there is no quarter payment. No, Mr. Ganesh, this time we don't have quarter payment. Correct. There would be a possibility someone comes earlier under monthly payment, now comes for quarterly payment. So for those people benefit, or for the purpose of computation for January, previous month, before that quarter, previous month, 100% cash payment. So under FSM, it will be either 35% of the quarterly payment cash or 100% of the monthly cash payment. If in case in the previous month they have not filed the return on quarterly basis, they file the return on monthly basis. Return filing can be only 2 basis, either a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. If it is monthly basis, then 100% of cash paid for the last month. That will be the payment for M1, that is that month 1, and for the M2, the month 2. Then for the third month, you will do a complete analysis and file the return at the end of that. Alternatively, I have a carried forward ITC. In this month, I have more ITC, or first 2 months first month I don't have much ITC. Second month I have more ITC. Can I offer a self-assessment method? Yes, individually that assessee can go and identify my output tax liability is so much, my input is so much, and my tax payable, there is no tax payable, so I will not pay tax. So I can keep quiet. An assessee can keep quiet for 2 months in case if he is under self-assessment and he has so much of ITC. Or he has computed in that month his purchases are more, sales is less, so his output tax liability will get adjusted with the input tax liability, and all are reflected. He has verified his to be, everything matches, then yes, he can compute. Exceptionally, no, my output tax liability is 1 lakh. My input tax liability is 95,000. So I have adjusted, I have to pay 5,000 rupees. I will pay now that 5,000. Let me repeat. At the time of making payment, PMT 06, 2 important aspects. If they are paying for QRMP, that option should be exercised in the challan, and in the same challan, the method that is opted by the assessee will also be selected, either at FSM or self-assessment. That method should also be selected, and then the payment will be made. Why? At a later point in time, in case of delay payment, in case of wrong calculations or wrong reporting, interest would be applicable. I don't foresee under FSM model If they pay within the due date, that is 25th, before 25th for month 1, and for month 2, that is in a quarter, first month and second month. In other words, January and February in our discussions now. If they pay tax before this Jan 25th and Feb 25th, and by 22nd or 24th, as the case may be, they file their GST R1 and GST R3B, absolutely there will be no interest liability. To the contrary, instead of 25th, they made a payment on 28th. Instead of 25th, in the next month, that is for Feb and March, they made a payment on 29th or 30th. Then there is a likely possibility of interest. So interest applicability will depend on case to case. It cannot be generalized. And one more aspect here is which option to choose, whether it is FSM, fixed sum method, or it is self-assessment method. That will be an individual subject matter of discussion for each assessee and from time to time. It cannot be a standard method. This is the method that would be the one most beneficial. No. Some of the additional points in connection with QRMP. If the data is reported in the IFF, invoice furnishing facility, which is provided by the government, that data need not be reported once again while filing GSTR1 in the month, after the end of the quarter. The invoice furnishing facility data will automatically be moved to GSTR1. Same in the case of if the assessee having an invoice furnishing facility for the second month, he reported, that data will also go to the GSTR1 automatically. Followed by all that the assessee need to do is, or the supplier need to do is, report his third month B2B transactions in the GSTR1, report all 3 months B2C and other transactions if any, claim necessary ITC and furnishes GSTR3B and GSTR1 well within the time system. So those are all the aspects in connection with the quarterly return and monthly payment. A welcoming scheme, no doubt about it. A scheme which has a lot of benefits, but with a lot of learning associated with it. There are many possibilities that somebody can skip many things. Assessee can be little ignorant, and he thought self-assessment method would be beneficial. And if ITCs are not reflected properly, the stake of the assessee is in question. Assessee has paid under the fixed sum method a taxes based on the previous quarter. Now, the current quarter, his inter supply will be different than that of previous quarter. At that time, what would happen? Maybe they would have clarified, nothing great about it. We also have an FAQ. By using a facility of the payment, it can be transferred from one head of, let's say, IGST has paid. He has a liability of CGST as GST. It can be transferred, which is a facility already available and effective from July 2020. Getting into few challenges of this scheme. Maybe a person is not interested in this scheme at all. He has opted for this scheme. He wants to opt out. He has to wait for a quarter and then only he can opt out. 2. Erroneously, he has been selected in the scheme, not by him. Department itself, a default selection, some mistake. Erroneously is selected. actually is not eligible for QRMP also. But today, maybe he can write express his grievance to the GSTN, but I don't foresee any change possible unless and otherwise before filing this quarter return and moving to the monthly method after once this is being complied in the next quarter. But for it, I don't find any problems associated. In case exceptionally, should not be applicable. So I don't foresee real situations like this. But again, on the academic end, in case if a person has two different registration and in one of the registration, he want to go for a quarterly return and a monthly payment, and another registration, he want to continue with the old method of monthly filing. Per se, there are no restrictions associated. For the month one, fixed sum method was beneficial to the supplier. So the supplier opted fixed sum method. For the month two, fixed sum method is not beneficial. Self-assessment method is beneficial. The assessee, can he opt self-assessment method for 1 month and fixed sum method for next month or vice versa? I would recommend not to do, but per se, from the law, I don't foresee a specific restriction in connection with this. Nowhere it restricts a supplier from swapping between the methods. These are all some of the takeaways of the QRMP scheme. To my mind, maybe now we can happily say that yes, it's a good and simple tax, but all along the journey which is crossed over the last 3-4 years were with a lot of hurdles and all those others associated with it. But today, this scheme, that too, the way in which government is foreseeing, the way in which the assessees are going to get benefited, no joke, really no joke. We feel a lot of small time assessees burden is getting really reduced associated. Any questions in connection with the quarterly return and monthly payment scheme? Yes, I would take it up before me getting into the concluding remarks. CAS Venkateshan has raised this question. Assessee under QRMP scheme, no payment of tax due, no payment of tax due to ITC available. Only RCM to be paid for the freight. How to make payment? Good. A very nice question. Venkatesan sir, my supplementary question to you is, you want to go to self-assessment method or you want to go to fixed sum method? You decide by yourself. If you want to opt fixed sum method, then as we discussed earlier, it will be flat 35% or 100% as the case may be. 35% of the quarterly payment or 100% of the previous month cash payment. So if you go under that method, reverse charge, giver's charge, this, that, forward charge, import of service, all are complied. FSM. If it is SAM, then meticulously it has to be worked out. Arrive your output tax liability. Arrive your ITC. Okay. If your output tax liability will be taken care by your ITC, then you no need to pay tax. But a very important and a subtle difference that you bring to the whole discussion here is, I have a ITC of 50,000 rupees, but my output tax liability is on account of RCM, then I am of a view it has to be paid. See, self-assessment method means assessee, he himself assess the tax liability and pay. So the RCM amount has to be paid is my humble submission. Maybe for the next month, this RCM would be eligible as an ITC. Now, next month also I have a RCM liability. I mean, I have a RCM liability. Then that has to be discharged if you follow SAM. So, which method if you're going to follow? If you're going to follow SAM, then RCM liability is a liability and it has to be discharged only through cash. Currently, I understand, it's my personal understanding. The system is not geared for calculating interest. Prima facie auto calculation. The system is not geared. So it would be very difficult even if the transactions are reported. The system is geared for a FSM method, auto calculation of interest. On a SAM method, the system is not geared up to that extent for auto calculation of interest because it will have own plus or minuses. So my recommendation to you is it has to be paid because as simple as that, you have output tax liability which has to be discharged only through cash. So it has to be discharged only through cash. So there is no second thought about it. Sivaram G has raised a question. QRMP scheme is an option given by the GST. Then why it has mandatorily changed the frequency for one who is regularly filing monthly to quarterly? Option should be given to the client to go to QRMP, whether it is ultra virus. Shivramji, as I earlier mentioned as part of my presentation also, option was given to the assessee. Maybe assessee has not notified. With due respect, our clients or no doubt, see, for all of us, our clients are important. I'm not finding fault with the client, but client should also understand if they get some mail from mygovernment.gov, they should have the habit of reading it. But somehow they fail to appreciate that fact. 26th December, check, ask the assessee to verify. 26th December, 27th December, or 28th December, or 29th December. Definitely a mail would have been received from the government that because your aggregate turnover is less than so much, we have mandated you to a quarterly scheme. You are freely allowed to move to monthly scheme before January 30th. Either the mail will be unread or they would have not given due importance to it. This facility was there, Shivramji. I would not, or they would have marked that respective mail ID under the spam. It would have been parked under spam. But with my humble experience, I have come across many assessees has forwarded this mail to us or taken our guidance in connection with what to do. Some of them are not interested in quarterly, as you very rightly said. Somehow, for all of us, all is set. Let's go monthly itself, in spite of turnover being 5 crore. They have moved from quarterly to monthly. So nothing. Ask them to follow it for 2 months. The third month, I mean from April, they can change it to automatic. In some method, it has to be paid, Venkatesan sir, nothing more about it. IFF for Jan has not been done before 13th. Can we update the Jan invoices in Feb IFF? Suchitra, yes, I believe there should not be any restriction. We have to wait and watch. I personally understand it should be possible, but I am not also confirming the view that, see, unless we do something, we don't know. If you ask me, Jan, we did, so we know that yes, IFF is accepting. In fact, we tried for one of the fellow after yesterday or day before yesterday, we tried, it was not accepting. So that is how we are concluding that it is not available. Even otherwise, the document is very clear. Post 13th, it will not be available. But whether an IFF or FEB will accept the details of Jan, why it should not accept? What would restrict it? Because that is any case just a furnishing facility. In my view, it should not restrict is what my view, Suchitra. But again, we have to wait and watch in connection with that. Client is having bank OD and CC. Okay. Asking bank, okay. Bank asking GSTR 3B every month. But no opting done by the client. It is moved to QRMP. What to be given? Any IFF report available? I don't think so. IFF report and all is available, Sivaramji. Nothing. Ask him to take a certificate from CA and let it be submitted along with the UDIN and other facilities. Should I opt for monthly payment for quarterly return or any other payment challan for RCM liability? Venkatesan ji, you will opt monthly payment for quarterly return. You will select that. You will select SAM, self-assessment method, SAM, and on the SAM you will pay the tax. See, whatever money paid currently will go and sit in the cash ledger. And once it goes and hit the cash ledger, once the return is filed only, it's get appropriated towards RCM and towards it. So as long as it will sit in the cash ledger, I would recommend not to use other payment, any other payment, because all those assessees who are not covered by the QRMP, all will be coming through any other payment. QRMP is a facility given for them at a challan reference number, the so-called CPIN, CIN. These are all common portal identification number, CPIN, CIN, challan identification number, which are all there. These challans capture those information. Has he paid his month 1 payment? Has he paid his month 2 payment? What method he opted? All that. All for that purposes, I would recommend not to use them. Kalyana Sundaram sir has raised a nice question. Can we claim input reflected in 2A, though the same is not reflected in 2B? Maybe I believe you will be little upset and angry with me. I am a fellow who will always insist that too after October 2019, appearance reflecting in 2A becomes mandatory. After October 20, reflecting in 2B becomes mandatory. If it is not reflected, let's not take the credit. It will have its own repercussions. Let me repeat it. Easy to say, does the government has power, this, that, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure all of us would have had an opportunity to read through the Finance Bill 2020, which has been 2021, which has been placed before the Parliament. 2021 bill has a 16(2) AA clause, which very categorically says that yes, it would be included. That is, the other fellow should report the transaction. It should be appearing here is now a condition, additional condition in the 16(2) conditions for claiming credit. So government is very conscious. Government is very aggressive on this because they want, they lost lot of revenue. So they'll be aggressive like that only. And we all know how the local jurisdictional officers will be also. They are also will be into pressure. They'll be very clear that if it comes, you claim credit, otherwise you forget it. So I am sorry, Kalyanasundram sir. I am not in favor with you. Okay. Usually I will be in a little aggressive mode, but this time and all, no, the government is little more clear. But okay, if the amount is large, we can always fight. See, always we can fight. But end of the day, we have to think from the businessman's perspective also. Nothing great about it. If the amount is quite high, there are cases where we are now before the filing a writ before the High Court. There are cases on the other way around also. In fact, we have received a notice from Telangana where Telangana state for one of the SSC where your table number 8 shows a difference. You have claimed excess 9 lakh rupee credit, so you have to pay that. We simply told you send me a show cause notice, I'll give you a standard reply because that is already ready with me. I have to do certain modification, insert the facts, and we have already 16 case laws in connection with this. We'll submit that to you. So coming back here, there are going to be fights in connection with this input tax bill, but we have to do the reconciliation. We should ensure that is getting reported. Bhupati Raj sir has raised a question. Export invoice with payment of IGST option is not available in IFF. IFF is very specifically restricted. Bhupati ji, IFF is restricted only to B2B invoices. I don't think so. It would allow us to report the export related aspects. Maybe I have not tried to be on the most honest side. I have to share. I don't think so. It will allow us to report those transactions. But I think I had an option to see 6A, but I'm not very sure. Let me try it out and share it to you at some time offline later. So any questions are there? Yes, I would take it up. Else, I thank you all. I thank the organizers. I thank the chairman, members, and all the learned members who are part of today's discussion uh, for effective and patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.